Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. As promised, today we are going to upgrade the $20 PC we looked at on our last video. If you haven't watched it yet, you can find the link in the description, but as a quick recap, this is the Acer PC we were working with. We established that this machine could do some light decorative work, was great at day-to-day tasks, very good performance with streaming, and you could get away with some gaming on it if you were willing to compromise. Of course, we do need to know how far we can push this machine with a small budget in mind, using used parts only. We are starting with the most important thing you will need for upgrading this machine, an SSD. We were working with a 3.5 hard drive, and even if you don't upgrade anything else, you should definitely do this one. It will make any older machine just feel a lot smoother and way more responsive, and you can go with either an NVMe like this one or a 2.5 SATA drive. For the NVMe, you would need an adapter since this PC does not have a M.2 slot, but I decided to go with this 240GB SATA drive from Kingston instead. This would probably cost something between $15 to $20 used, but I got it for free, and you might need a bay adapter if your case does not have the proper mounting holes. This came with the drive, but you can find these on Amazon really cheap, and if you have some patience and do your research, you can find it cheaper or even free on your local marketplace. And of course, our old hard drive will be our secondary storage for files and games. Next, we are going to be adding more RAM. You could just take out the old ones and replace them with 16GB in dual channel, but I wanted to keep as many original components as possible, and this was a good opportunity to showcase a RAM mix situation. Normally, I wouldn't recommend this because it can cause instability, but you can look for the same specs and they should be fine working together. These will run at a higher latency, which means less performance in theory, but it's negligible. They're close enough, so I'm pretty sure the system will be stable. These Corsair sticks cost me $10 on my local marketplace, but eBay is also a great place to find these old DDR3 memories. And of course, we'll be upgrading our GPU. I knew this would be a must if we wanted to do more complex creative work, but one thing to keep in mind here, a machine this old, you won't benefit in having any modern GPU, and you will be limited to the 300 watts power supply anyways, which has the added caveat of not having a PCIe power cable. You can get an adapter like this one, but I wouldn't recommend this since it can overheat your SATA connector and it might become a fire hazard in the long run. So I'm sticking to a GPU that doesn't need extra connectors to work. I landed on the GTX 1650 with 4GB DDR5 VRAM. It isn't the best GPU even for its time, but it will be enough for what we are trying to achieve here and only cost me $50 used. AMD will have some decent options within that price range, but Nvidia is the preferred choice for creative work because of its CUDA cores, and this is our main goal with this PC. Finally, I'll be doing the new testing with the i5 4590, but also we'll be adding the i7 4790, which I wasn't going to be upgrading this computer with, but for $40 with shipping included, it was worth getting to see how much extra performance this would give us and if it's worth the extra price. So let's get this upgrade started. Alright, upgrade is done, and the only part that we couldn't reuse was our old AMD GPU. I installed Windows 11 this time and it's running quite nicely with these upgrades. Let's take a look at some benchmarks now. First, let's see how these upgrades handle firmware. And before, I actually did this benchmark, but it was way too low of a result, which is not the case here anymore, and with the new specs, the benchmark is running way better. I ran Cinebench again and got an improved score of 3062 on the i5 multi-core tests, which is due to the extra 8GB of RAM that we have now. We will be comparing it with the i7 at the end of the video. For some gaming benchmarks, I ran TimeSpy with a score of 3247 and Firestrike with a score of 1716. Pretty decent for $80 worth of upgrades from my previous setup. Running Blender's benchmark, we can actually see how well the GTX 1650 will handle working with computer graphics. For comparison, I'm putting both results from our old setup and the new one with the upgrades. I couldn't test out the AMD GPU with this benchmark, but even knowing we tested the i5 before and now the 1650, the results are night and day. Going to Blender, right away we can install the latest version and everything just works really well. We use the same scenes as before, even lighted environments are now loading fast, and we can move the viewport without much lag. The old GPU unfortunately was holding us back here, and even though you can make do with an older card like that, it will only take you so far, and you would need to upgrade eventually if you wish to work on more complex CG scenes. Same with video editing, now we are able to actually preview and edit videos on DaVinci Resolve. Video playback looks really good, no major stutters, and scrubbing the timeline is really smooth. These ones I'm using here are 1080p, and with only 16GB of RAM, I would say this is the max resolution you should be working with on this setup. Putting 32GB instead of 16 would definitely help out with 2K editing and also 4K, and should be doable honestly, but I would say 1080p is the sweet spot. For graphic design, it will be a breeze with these updates as well. On day-to-day tasks, not much to say besides it will feel even better than before. Browsing the web, watching YouTube videos, doing some office work, you will get a lot done with these upgrades. Even though the new GPU and extra RAM aren't really necessary for these kind of tasks, I say it again, adding an SSD on this PC is a must and makes a world of difference. Moving on to gaming, let's check one that we tested before. Bioshock Infinite at 1080p very high settings, floating around 150 FPS. That's 5 times what we were getting before with a higher resolution and more quality. With 4 times the VRAM and jumping from DDR3 to DDR5, we know older games will run amazingly. You can even try 1440p and 4K on some of the older games, but 1080p looks really good here. We tried Injustice in our last video, now we are going for Injustice 2. Running 1080p at 60fps high settings, very smooth gameplay and no stutters whatsoever. Before we couldn't quite hit 60 at 1080p with the first game, but with the GTX 1650, fighting games like this will run great. Now that we know that we can run heavier games on this machine, let's try Arkham City. 1080p at very high settings, would run mostly at 60fps but dipping down occasionally. I really like how it looked, and since I could barely notice the dips anyway, I just left as is and kept playing for a while. If the dips below 60 do bother you, a mix of medium and high settings should do the trick. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was playing initially at 1080p medium settings, but I noticed it would occasionally run between 50 to 55 FPS on more demanding scenes. So I changed to low preset, and that would have 1 or 2 dips below 60, but nothing too bad. Locking into 60 FPS will give you a very smooth experience. And I did notice the GPU still had some headroom, so you can try a mix of low and medium settings, lock it to 60, and have an amazing time with this game. Doom Eternal is also another great game to see what this PC can do now. 1080p at medium settings seems to be the way to go. A couple of times I noticed dropping it below 60 FPS, but if it weren't for Afterburner, I wouldn't even notice honestly. But if that does bother you, just lock it to 60 and have an amazing time with this game. To wrap up gaming and showcasing how much this PC got a decent upgrade, we are trying Cyberpunk 2077. If you wish to keep this at 1080p medium preset, I'll lock this at 30, but if you want to get more out of it, I would recommend 1080p low preset. On the game benchmark, we got a 54 FPS average, which is not quite 60, but it will feel smoother than 30 and still looks quite decent. For the emulation side of things, we are again using RetroBat on Windows and starting with some PPSSPP. Chains of Olympus, which runs smoothly upscale to 1080p. You can go even higher, this CPU will handle it just fine. Throwing a little bit of Dolphin here, this will handle GameCube and even Wii. Most games will be able to upscale to 720p or 1080p, no problem for this machine, and even on something more demanding, we are still able to get great performance. Original Xbox also worked great. I tried first at 3x resolution, but it would occasionally slow down to 50 FPS, making the gameplay really slow. Going down to 2x, which is 720p, ran pretty smoothly at 60 FPS. To wrap up, PS2 with God of War 2 upscaled to 1080p, and I would bet this machine would do some light PS3 games as well. As promised, we're going to be adding the i7 4790 in this PC and compare some results with our previous testings, see if it's worth putting an extra $40 and what kind of gains we can get. For creative work, the i7 will definitely help and improve performance on something like Blender, DaVinci or Unreal. All these apps will take advantage of the extra threads, and running Cinebench, we can see the difference between the 4590 and the 4790, with the latter improving render times, viewport responsiveness, and overall a more smooth experience while editing videos above 1080p. For the gaming side though, it's not the same story. We can see the difference between the i5 and the i7 on time spy is very small, and although I ended up using Firestrike Ultra on both CPUs, the results is also pretty close. To make sure these benchmarks are matching real-world gaming, I'm putting two games side by side. First, let's take a look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which was almost an exact match in terms of performance, getting almost no benefit of having the i7 here, ending up with the same setting as the i5. Now, Cyberpunk, on the other hand, did benefit from having those extra threads and slight better core clocks, but it was a bump of about 9 FPS on the benchmark, which did get us over the 60 FPS average. To wrap up the comparison, the initial computer was $20, adding roughly $20 for the SSD, $10 for the extra RAM, and $50 for the GPU. With those upgrades, we made a very decent $100 machine that can game and do a lot of good creative work. And now with the i7, the total comes to $140, a 40% increase on the final price. In the end, it's going to be totally up to you if it's worth the extra money for the i7. I would say for creative work, it would be a decent investment if your budget is very tight and you're looking at a computer like this, but it's still enough to invest in a better CPU. However, if this is for gaming and a day-to-day PC for web browsing, the i5 would be just fine, and it isn't worth the extra $40 for a small bump in performance. And this is a wrap for this PC. It is really awesome to see how far these old machines can go and how much we can get out of them. I certainly had a lot of fun testing this one out. Without any upgrades, it was already a very decent setup and a lot of people would be pretty happy with it, although I do recommend adding the SSD at the very least. But for something like creative work and playing newer titles at 1080p, if you don't want to be too limited, adding at least the RAM and the GPU to your upgrade list will make this PC gain a few more years of service. Would you buy this machine for $20 and keep as is, or would you try to upgrade it? Let us know in the comments. I appreciate the thumbs up if you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe to see more content coming up soon, and thank you very much for watching this. Cheers!